Hi everyone, this is Krista Rose, hashtag KR Defying the Odds, and I wanted to come on and tell you about my story of domestic violence, just a little bit about it. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So most of you know that my platform is Defying the Odds, which includes surviving 12 years, nearly 12 years of child abuse from my mother. Most of you are unaware of and are surprised to find out that I am also a survivor of domestic violence from my first marriage. I almost did not get out of that marriage alive. It started, we got engaged, I got pregnant because we wanted to start a family. And the weeks leading up to our wedding, he got more angry and aggressive. Every little thing seemed to upset him. The night before our wedding, we were fighting, and he had me on the floor and was choking me. Now you ask, why did I go through the marriage? Why didn't I leave then? Well, I was 18. I thought that's what a relationship entailed, and that was also my fault. His family told me that I needed to do stuff to not make him angry, that I was the wife, that it was my job to keep him happy. So the day of the wedding, I actually had to, I call it almost being dragged down the aisle / forcing myself, because I knew how much time and money the family had put into our wedding. But I do wish that I would have never gotten married to him. A month after we got married, things had escalated. It just kept getting worse. It obviously didn't have anything to do with the stress of the wedding. One day, before he went to work, I had asked to return some items to the library so we wouldn't get charged a fee. 18, pregnant, trying to save money. And it just triggered something in him, and next thing I knew is I was being shoved up against the wall. I ended up having bruises. I had welts across my stomach from where he whipped my stomach. I was 3 months pregnant at the time. There were holes on the wall, punched, items broken. He pretty much almost choked me out, and that really scared me that day, and I didn't see any end in sight. And so I reached out to the police because I really felt my life was in danger. He had threatened to hurt me if I told anyone or turned him in, and I was more scared of him killing me than I was of him threatening me. And so that's why I reached out to the police, and I'm glad I did. They arrested him, and I got out of that situation. Now, when my son was born, I was raised to do everything you possibly can to make a marriage work. You don't give up. That divorce is not an option. And so I did try to go back with him. He was apologetic, very remorseful, but I should have known better, because just in our trial run, as you would call it, he reverted back to his old self. He said he didn't need help. He refused to get counseling. I remember one comment being, the only issue I have is an anger issue. So we did eventually go our separate ways. Sadly, I ended up having to deal with him due to custody arrangements for about another 8-9 years. That 8-9 years, a lot of people see the pictures of us at coaching Little League, at school events, at different events over the year, if you saw my Facebook posts. But what a lot of people don't know is those years were the most hardest, emotional, and mentally traumatizing years, next to my being abused as a child for nearly 12 years. Those 8-9 years was really intense, because even though we weren't together, we still shared a child, and he still had issues that he'd never worked on. And we, both my husband and I, who is an absolute saint for putting up with this and putting up with my ex, he did property damage to our house. He'd get in our faces, threaten to hurt us, both me and my husband. And we did our best to shield everything from my son. We'd see him several times a week, and we never knew what kind of mood to expect. I was in literal fear every time, the day of, and I would usually not meet him alone. I would have friends come over and stay with me just during drop-offs to make sure that nothing happened, because it was so dangerous for me to be alone with him. I couldn't trust that he wouldn't do anything in front of our son, because one time he assaulted me in front of our son, and in front of my husband. Unfortunately, the courts didn't recognize that how dangerous the situation was, and we were stuck. Now, as a child, and as an adult, as a parent, I wanted to protect my son from ever being abused, and I never wanted him to experience that. Sadly, one day my son came home and he let it slip that he had been being abused and threatened not to tell anyone. So that really broke my heart, and we worked to sever that relationship. And finally, it was a beautiful moment of freedom when we realized that he was, at least for now, not going to be in our life. I wasn't going to have to deal with him, several times a week. I mean, it was 8-9 years of constant bullying, verbal threats, emotional trauma, mental trauma. Like I said, my husband's a saint for putting up with all of this. We got my son out of the situation. He was never allowed alone to see my ex, and my ex eventually gave up his parental rights, which most of you know my husband ended up adopting my son. Like I said, he's a saint. My husband is. I got lucky the second time around. So women, they are out there. There are men out there that will respect you, cherish you, love you through the hard times and the bad. And trust me, our marriage, we've been through a lot of difficult times. Especially 8-9 years of bullying. So that is my story of being a domestic violence survivor, just a little bit of it. I still look back now and realize how naive I was, and the lack of resources back then. And it breaks my heart to know that there are still to this day other men and women out there. The statistics say there's 20 people every minute that get abused. I'm very grateful that I survived mine, and that I'm here to share my story and encourage, if you're in a domestic violence situation, I encourage you, I beg you, please get out. You are so much more worth it. Don't let his or hers insecurities make you feel less about yourself as a person. or your kids. You are your child's advocates. They need somebody to speak up for them, and you are that only person right now. They don't need to be around that kind of environment. It's toxic and dangerous, and I really don't want. I've heard of so many women who did not survive and get out of their situation, and they were killed. And it just breaks my heart, because we should be loved, we should be valued, we should be respected as women. We're amazing people, and other people need to appreciate that. So for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it really needs to not be a month, it needs to be year-round. If you're in a domestic violence situation, please get out, reach out to me. I can help you get out of the situation. If you're already out of the domestic violence situation, I am so grateful you are alive and you made it through. Don't go back. My first words of advice, do not go back, no matter what stops he pulls out, no matter what his family or other friends think. You know you are so much more valuable and worth more than being abused. And if you have kids, your kids too. They deserve to be in a safe, secure environment. Abuse is not love. Abuse is not love. And then if you are not in a domestic violence situation, familiarize yourself with resources. Always have numbers, emails, names of organizations or people that you can reach out to if someone comes and approaches you saying that they need help. So please help them. Have the stuff in your back pocket, so to say. So that is my story on domestic violence. I'm defying the odds. I defied those odds. Looking back, I probably should not have come out of the situation alive, but I did, and my son and I both did. It's really, the bullying though was really hard, and the mental trauma for another 8-9 years, and it was such a relief when it was over and we found out we weren't going to have to interact with him anymore. It's very hard to deal with for that long of a time, that many times a week. So you got this. You're loved, you're beautiful, you're valuable, and there is a much better life out there for you than being abused and in fear of your own life being taken from you or your children's. So please reach out and or look for resources if you aren't in a domestic violence situation. If you want to talk more to me about my story or want me to share my story, please reach out to me at KR Defying the Odds. Thank you.